This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW.
To be honest, not a lot of things in the world beat roast pork belly or pork, like the middle of the pork of not a too big a pig, crackly as hell. Like if you're a master of the crackle, you're pretty much a master of the universe.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The warm climate, incredible seafood and bounty of tropical fruit and vegetables all drive the menu and ambience at award-winning restaurant Nunu in far North Queensland. But for owner Nick Holloway, pork weaves a vital web through the menu to bring balance and depth too. Nick, how you going?
Good, Huck. How you going, bud?
Good. I know it's a little bit cold in down south where I'm at the moment, but I think you're still in singlets.
Yeah, that's hardly the case up here. It is still extremely tropical, and it's been pouring with rain for the last 2 days, which has been a bit of a challenge. But it seems like every time I fire up my smoker at home, it decides to rain, and my whole house gets inundated with smoke, much to the frustration of my wife and children.
Well, you have an amazing menu up there that really dips into that sort of tropical fruits and seafood that's available. But, we don't often think about pork in that sort of setting, but you do amazing things with pork. Tell us a little bit about the connections you've made up there.
I think, if you kind of think about that a little bit more, I mean, pork is prevalent throughout Southeast Asia, which is largely tropical climate. It's just such an incredibly versatile product that has so many applications, from cold cuts to fermentation and sausage making and traditional roasts, etc. And I have always been fascinated by pork. I suppose it's a love affair that started with my mother, which I imagine is the same for most people, bit of roast pork and apple sauce. My mum's a pom. But up here I have this incredible supplier, Bushy Creek Farms, who are 100% pasture raised, finished on grass, fed on grass, hormone free, chemical free, and no fertilizers used on their pasture. And I also buy whole cattle off them as well. So it's really an opportunity to work with super premium pigs, super premium quality product, but also have that very direct relationship with the farmers and suppliers. And that's really been what's kept me in far North Queensland so long. I grew up. I started in quite high profile restaurants in the big city, and we had the best of everything, but it was always sort of at arm's length. And you're unfortunately, yes, you have everything, but everything comes at the cost of sort of third party suppliers and a purveyor or someone in between you and the actual grassroots product. And when I came up here to far North Queensland, I was just totally enamoured by a rekindling of that flame. I grew up in a country town. And those close relationships you have with people, and it really is a sense of community. You really do have that sort of kindred spirit that you're all going through the same experience at the same time in the same place, and that is warms the soul, mate. It makes you feel good.
That sounds amazing. Does it give you a sense of obligation? When you have such a strong connection with the farmer, the pigs, for example. Do you feel a real obligation on the plate when you're cooking it?
Absolutely, and I think that people's the fact that you can be at arm's length to the reality of what it is to consume meat by shopping at the supermarket, which we all do. I've got nothing against the convenience. It's modern life, but it really does impress upon you the importance of being a custodian all the way through, from start to finish. And it gives certainly my team gives them a real sense of appreciation for what the cost was here, but both the cost of a life, the cost of caring and looking after the land, the cost of production. And I'm not talking about financial costs so much, more as sort of philosophical costs. And the fact that you do start to think, geez, I've really got to do the right thing here. I've got to make sure I get every single skerrick used and do it with a real sense of grace and a real sense of sort of respect.
But tell us a little bit about those pigs when you get them in. You mentioned the smoker earlier. Does any of it hit the smoker?
But pretty much everything hits the smoker in my house. Now, I've had a complete fascination with sausage making of late. I believe, I'm not the only one to say this, but it's an art form that is often overlooked, and maybe it's our association with the Bunnings $2 sausage, which has its place, and we love that, and I love a bit of a sausage in the morning on a Saturday. Us weekend warriors, but I think that there's another elevation to that. I heard a reference to it the other day, and I was doing one of my endless searches for more pork cooking products, but someone called it hot guts as a description for hot links or hot smoked sausages. And just the very idea that you're putting, the shoulder into an intestine is whilst it seems macabre, I think it takes a deft hand, and it also, you got to sort of stuff it up a couple of times to realise, there's some real nuance there that gets you to the point of, the holy grail of sausage perfection. I've had a couple of cracks at mortadella. I mean, that's been a really challenging, but so far the results have been amazing. I'm hardly going to, rock the boat of the of the Italians yet, but I certainly. I feel like I'm putting out a pretty good product, and that's largely due to the quality of the raw product, the pig itself. So I've made some bacon, and yesterday I had some pork neck in the smoker first, and did a bit of a reverse sear. So, I am truly fascinated. Truly fascinated, and I think it started a very long time ago. One of my best mates growing up is an Italian bloke, and they had the classic vinyl on the lounge suite and salamis hanging in the garage above the Statesman, and that was sort of that early feeling of what could be done with pork. But then moving to Melbourne from country Victoria and living in inner city Melbourne in North Qld, where I had a really close proximity to Casa Iberica, the shop there. And in those days, Angel was making, or I don't know how to say the Spanish pronunciation, I'm sorry, but Angel was making that incredible jamon that the whole roof was filled with. And it was such a travesty when he got stopped from doing that. But the jamon was incredible. And then the Italians, obviously, with salami and sausage on Lygon Street. But not only that, I lived and worked. I apologize for that. I worked over in Richmond, and obviously had to go past Victoria Street. And the Vietnamese have just such a panache when it comes to using pork as well. One of my favourite things in the world is a banh mi, and it's got liver pate and cold cut and some luncheon meat, which I had a crack at recently for my daughter's birthday. And whip the pork mince, and then also put a fine sort of following the Red Lantern method, bit of pork mince through it, and then wrapped it in banana leaf and steamed it, and that was just awesome. And it actually quite easy to do, and to Dutch up a bit of lunch meat for the kids for the week for their school lunches. It was awesome.
Well, after sort of when you carved your career in Melbourne, why did you make the move to North Queensland, and what was it like for you?
To be honest, the roots of that story aren't super clear to me. I don't really know why. Well, you kind of look back and think, why did I move to Cairns? Like, I had been here on holiday twice. I had done no real market research at all. I think it was just that time in your life. You get itchy feet around 27, or I know a lot of people who have. And I do think that a regional life was calling me again, and I've told this story before, but if you grow up in the country and you're a country kid, there is this, and you're a little bit flamboyant and creative, it certainly feels like there's a claustrophobia of country life that as a young person, when you're in your teens and your teens essentially, really feels like it's closing you off and not allowing you to fly free. And I moved to the city, went to uni for a little bit. That didn't work out. And I think what attracted me to kitchens was that kind of wild pirate life, the all-inclusiveness of kitchen life. But after some time, there's a feeling, or I can only speak for myself, but the sentiment for me in the city was it was feeling very, very lonely and very kind of unconnected. Like there was a disconnect. I mean, I lived in a terrace house, didn't even know my neighbours, didn't even really make an effort. I mean, maybe that's a function of being a 20-something, and enjoying city life. But it just felt like there was something missing. And that something missing, ironically, is kind of getting back to where you started. I mean, I live in a tiny little town that may as well be where I grew up. I say hello to everyone that I pass in the street. I walk my dog every single morning. And we are uniquely connected to the whole community, And that was absolutely evident during COVID. There was this real sense that we were all in it together. And we were connected, and there's something that adds something to life. I don't know. I don't have the vocabulary to explain it correctly, but there is something. Yeah, there is something absolutely special about that sense of being connected and knowing that you're part of something, that you're contributing, that you're taking, that you're all part of this sort of to and fro, this push and pull of community. Super important to me. And then from a creative capacity or aspect, I was in a whole new world. I came to far North Queensland. The ingredients were different. The relationships with people were different. And it's almost like learning to, like, you think you're a pretty good painter, and then someone gives you another whole set of colours, and you're like, what do I do with these? And you kind of go back to the start, and there's a great childlike joy and quality to that experience. How do I use this? Oh, maybe I could try this. Maybe I could try that. And look, there's a lot of mistakes along the way. But those mistakes are the sort of mistakes you want to make. They're messy. They're learning. They're just like me trying to make sausages at the moment. Like it's not all wins, but you feel like the general trend is you're learning. And I think that's something that's super important to me, the development of myself, professionally and personally.
One of the beautiful things that's happened over the last sort of 10, 15 years is the boom in regional dining and a real sense of place. And that's something that you've been doing for quite a while. And your menu and food really speaks of the region. When did you really sort of feel like you were getting on top of that and sort of expressing sort of the voice of the region?
To be honest, probably, we turn 20 next year. And which is a long time in hospitality. It's a very long time. If you look at the scene, you look at the marketplace, it is a long time. And that was always our desire as a restaurant to avoid, the pitfalls of being cool. We have no interest in being the most progressive, the most exciting, or the coolest. But I have a very, very, very serious ambition to become a fixture, iconic, like to withstand the time and pressure and all the rest, to continue to offer a local product to local people. But, further reaching than that, I mean, it probably was around the 10-year mark when you start to, what was I then, 38, nearly 50 now. So you start to get a bit of a feel for who you are, and you're not trying so hard, and yet you really are just sort of teasing out that identity, like I'm sure reinvention's possible, but I do strongly believe, and then this is something again like really cemented by COVID, that people want meaning in their lives, and meaning is determined by having truly unique experiences. Experiences give life meaning, and we run the risk, in certain parts of the culture of just reproducing whatever the culture is in every major city. And that dilutes and diminishes that experience of having unique experience, like truly unique dinners, unique culture, unique language. And that's something I think is very, very important. Australia, we're a relatively young nation, modern Australia. Obviously, we're not long-term, but, we run the risk of just being all thrown into the one pot and being called, oh, that's Aussie, and Australia is huge. And Cairns is as far above Brisbane as Melbourne is below. You know, we're another 2,000 kilometres, or don't quote me on the numbers, but we're very, very, very long way above Brisbane. And that gives rise to just incredible geographic diversity, which in turn gives rise to just a plethora of ingredients. And we should be celebrating those differences. We should be actually really, really celebrating those differences.
Your menu certainly kind of has that Southeast Asian feel to it, that tropical feel in that sense. And take us through some of the pork dishes that you have there and how they weave with the local tropical ingredients as well.
Yeah, as I said, I think that's sometimes a misconception that we are a Southeast Asian restaurant. I think that there's probably more of a synergy with all climate parts of the world. I think of it as like food of the sun, Mexico, south of France, Italian, there's no real rules. I think that we're a little more broad than just Southeast Asian. Over the years, we've had a number of pork dishes on the menu. I mean, one of my favourites from forever ago, which we don't have one at the moment, but it was such a labour of love. Heavily inspired by a David Thompson technique, and we would get pork hocks and deep fry them from raw, and then plunge them into ice 4 or 5 times, and then braise them in this super rich peanut sauce using local peanuts. And not satay necessarily, but it's also not Thai. Just a really punchy, sour, greasy, sort of peanutty, spicy sauce. And then after braising them, we'd chill and then we'd fry them again. So I think these poor bloody pork hocks had about 6 runs through the hot oil before you ate them. So you could hardly call them healthy, but they were definitely delicious. So, that's, if there's one thing that's a cornerstone of the business that I still adhere to, to this day, first and foremost, it has to be delicious. And it has to be done in the spirit of generosity and true hospitality. They don't come here for me, mate. They come here they come here for each other, we're just a support crew.
One of the dishes that I noticed on the menu is the coconut roast pork ribs. Take us through that.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's one of my all-time favourites. Again, we certainly give it a fair old whack. So pork ribs, we trim them up a little bit. I like to keep them pretty chewy and pretty meaty. So we then soak them in fish sauce and sugar, and then all the offcuts from the that we may have generated over the day, whether that's mackerel lime leaves or lemongrass scraps or shallot scraps or chili scraps, and that all gets, and a little bit of Chinese wine, and they all get marinated together. And then we braise them in some coconut cream with the marinade until they just tighten up and set. So they're fully cooked, but they're definitely not falling off the bone. It's not what we try and do with our ribs. I like a little bit of toothy feel. And then they get set in the fridge. And then we make a super, super rich pineapple caramel with all of our leftover pineapple. We rotate them along the wall. The restaurant doesn't have any walls if you've ever been here, but we rotate them in the sun so they get super, super ripe, and then grate the pineapple and simmer it down with some dark palm sugar and some star anise and some cassia and some clove, and then season that with a little bit of tamarind and fish sauce just to make this really, really jammy pineapple sour caramel. So then we barbecue the pork ribs over coal and keep brushing them with that pineapple caramel so that it almost becomes like a toffee apple. Like the outside becomes quite tacky and crunchy and super strong. And once they're cooked and quite burnished and brown, I do like to take things all the way to, some people would think that my cooking is heading on towards the burnt end of the region, but I feel like that's what us Aussies are like, sun-kissed and sun-blessed. So once they're cooked, they get dressed with another one of a little bit of the roasted coconut and some mackerel lime leaves finely sliced and some finger lime. Our finger lime industry up here is just phenomenal. Just on that, I was just in New Zealand last week, and they're paying $185 a kilo for finger limes, and I pay, which is just, and when things cost that much, you treat them very differently to the way we throw them around here at $40 a kilo, I promise you. And then we make a fresh hot sauce every day, and it's not a fermented hot sauce, and it's definitely not a Nam Jim Thai style hot sauce. Mind you, the ingredients are similar. There's no sugar, so we just pound up in the mortar and pestle more garlic than you think you should eat, with some salt and some chilies and some chopped up mint leaves. Season it with a salt we make, which has got some cassia and star anise and clove. And then lots and lots of lime juice. So it's embracingly hot, like your face should actually pucker and your eyes squint and water when you taste it. And so we spoon that over the pork ribs. So the net result is this smoky, barbecuey, jammy sort of pork rib that's got super concentrated pork flavour from the marinating, with this bracingly hot, raw sauce. And it's a thing of glory.
You're a difficult man to talk to on an empty stomach. You briefly mentioned making bacon a bit earlier. Tell us about the process you go through there and the successes you've had.
Yeah, so the last batch of bacon I made was really, really, really impressive. Actually, the thinner parts were probably a titch salty. I need to figure out how to mitigate that. So using just some flake salt and some pink salt, just to keep it nice and safe. We are in a very hot environment up here, and a lot of I like to finish a lot of the small goods I make over slow smoke, so they are sitting, at low temperatures for some time. So having the pink salt in there is necessary, and then mountains of molasses from the Mossman Mill. And I find molasses a really fascinating cooking ingredient in the fact that it's not sweet at all, but it has this just almost like funky, jungly mystery. It's got a really quite interesting flavour. And I keep always, whenever I taste it, I pick up those anise notes. It's almost licoricey in its flavour. And so slathered all over the pork belly that we use. I didn't use the eye of the pork belly, just the belly itself. Marinated that for 7 days. And then as it cured, and then rinsed it off and dried it for a day, and then smoked it until I got an internal of 70 degrees. And it was absolutely cracking. I mean, burnished, dark chocolate brown almost, this beautiful smell. I mean, I think anise and pork have got, they've got a natural affinity there. As I said, the thinner end was probably a titch salty, but I can mitigate that with whatever I serve it with. But the thicker end, oh my God, I was just eating it sliced. My kids and I were just eating it sliced out of the smoker. So it was just incredible. Wow.
Do you have sort of any dishes that you use that in, or thoughts of how you use the bacon?
Not as yet, but what I'm thinking, this is yet to actually be tested in any way. But like a riff on somewhere between a Caesar and a Rockefeller style salad, but basically thin sliced candied molasses roast bacon. We're at our fig seasons in full bloom here at the moment. Some sliced cos, kind of in strips. So sliced cos, some bacon, this homemade bacon, the figs, a bit of a fig juice, maybe some lavender, and then make a whey dressing. So it'd be like salty, lactic, sour, and fruity, but with that real punch of molasses roast pork belly.
Amazing. You mentioned that you'd made some mortadella and you had some real wins there. Take us through the mortadella making process. What's sort of important when you're making it?
Yeah. So, it was my first crack at an emulsified sausage. So, at first it seems really odd to be keeping the meat as lean as possible, so no additional fat. So actually, the first one I used the shoulder and two or three shoulders and a fibrous casing, and painstakingly removed all the sinew and fat, but kept back fat off the back of the pig that I diced up, and some raw macadamias, and then kept it as just insanely cold. So just in and out of the freezer, freeze to mince, back in the freezer, freeze to go through the robo to just get a super fine mousse. And then freeze again, and then keeping it just below like nearly 0 degrees the whole time, and then whipping in the water and the wine, and just making sure that temperature just doesn't get up at all. Which, if you live and work in an ambient temperature of what feels like about 50 degrees and 100% humidity, it's a challenge. And that's what's been fun. Everything you read is like, the sausages get made in winter. And I'm like, well, it's not winter, but we're going to have a crack. And I think that if you're really doing super hygienic and making sure, you're hitting all of those marks with the temperature, and then making sure that you're using the right kind of inhibitors to make sure nothing nasty grows, it's all good. It's all good. So my first one, I used less wine, and I got a classic mortadella soft baby pink, and I was really happy. I think I could have done a better job with getting a finer mousse and a little bit of sinew here and there. The second one, being typical cowboy, I added more wine, or reduced wine further, and it did give the whole thing a burgundy sort of hue, which wouldn't pass any DOC. But it was delicious and had a far better mouthfeel. It's a little creamier, It's a very special cut of meat, the old mortadella. And then it's smoked for about 6 hours, and my smoker looks like something out of Mad Max. It's not your... It's not your classic smoker. It's made from recycled, or upcycled, as we like to say, farm rubbish, farm junk. It's an old LPG tank and bits of wire and, and metal from here and there, but it certainly works. So, yeah.
What sort of flavour combinations have you landed on with the sausages?
My favourite to date, and my most recent batch, I reckon, are the winner. They're the ones I'll put in the canned show, I reckon. No, no, I'm not ready for the show yet. But I'm tell you what, I've got my eyes on the prize. I want to be number one. I want to be king of the north as far as sausages go. And I'm eyeing off all the local butchers. I'm coming for them. I tell you what. So a really coarse grind of sausage, pork. This Bushy Creek pork, lots and lots of intramuscular fat, a bit of added fat, sitting around that probably 30%, 30-70 rule, I'd say. And then crutch eye, which has just come into season here in Cairns at Rusty's Market. So I got a whole handful of finger root or wild ginger 2 weeks ago at the market, and it's got such an exotic flavour, and a little bit of white sugar and a little bit of white pepper. So almost leaning towards that Thai, Vietnamese flavour profile, but in a very, very traditional European sausage. Natural casings, a little bit smaller. I did move towards using some milk powder as a binder, which I didn't want to at first, but it is just milk. It doesn't make them dairy-free, but tell you what, it gives the sausage some serious snap. It gives it because before that, a couple of batches ago, I did everything the same and had a granular sort of feeling sausage. I was absolutely heartbroken. There's no way I'm going to win the prize with that one. And then did some more reading and found out about using milk powder just to give it, using the casein in there to give it just a bit more crunch. I love a New York hot dog sort of crunch on the sausage. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy.
What's your favourite cut of the pig, and do you have a way that you like to cook it?
Oh, it's all pretty good. It's all pretty damn good. I can honestly think of an application for every single part of the pig that I love, from the ears to the snout to the tail to the face, the bones, the trotters, the shanks. Oh, what to pick, what to choose. To be honest, not a lot of things in the world beat roast pork belly or pork, like the middle of the pork of a not a too big a pig. Crackly as hell. Like if you're a master of the crackle, you're pretty much a master of the universe. There's not not many things surpass. I'm going to tell you what, it's rich, and you feel like you push the limits a bit because you can't stop eating it. But when you season super crackly pork with a nice spice salt, oh my God, and that intramuscular fat's melted, and if you get your timings correct, everyone's got their own methodology. I like to do a heavy pre-salt, a good dry, roast in a very hot oven, and then drop it down. Hopefully you don't get any bubbling. If you can do it over smoker in the wood oven at home, oh my God, that adds another level.
20 years ago, you made the sort of move out of the city and to far north Queensland. If you think back sort of what you were like back then as a chef and a person compared to now, like what sort of impact has this huge change and had on you?
I think it's just growing older. Like, you just get more confident about who you are and what you're doing. I mean, if you think of the way, and I'll speak for myself, I mean, as a young chef, you're just always thinking about what you can add to a dish. You're obsessed with what could you add that would further, remind everyone of your skill and technique. What could you do to further kind of push the fortress or the brand of yourself? What more can you add? And yes, it's something happens in the middle when you start realizing it's not what you add, it's what you take off. And I don't care if it's music, if it's painting, if it's fashion, if it's they're all the creative arts. It's what is the barest minimum required to say the most, and that's it. And that's like the art of living. You just start to realize it's not what you're putting on the dish, it's what you're taking off. It's can I just say everything I need to say, and this is just it in its purest form. And then, to me, that comes back to, what does nunu mean as a restaurant? Well, nunu essentially just means nude. It means unencumbered. It means, it means purity. That's its goal. I mean, it's ambitious. I'm not saying we get there all the time. And mastery is elusive. And the closer you get to it, the more you realise it's fucking a long way away, But at least you can see it. You can start to see what it could look like. And you start moving towards that elusive goal, which is just to be, like I said, pure, nude and unencumbered.
Well, Nick, it's a nightmare to talk to you on an empty stomach, but as always, it's really entertaining. We've loved having you on the Crackling today to hear a part of your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Will do, mate. Ripping yarn. Great to have a chat, bud.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.